Om Tavakatamritam Taptajivanam Kavibirititam Kalmashapam Shravanamangalam Shrimadatatam Bhuvingaranantiye Burida Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poet seers, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears, cleanser of all sins is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good evening, friends. Swami Satyamananda is presently in Kansas City, and so he has asked me to give the class this evening. So this evening we will continue with the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and we will be talking about Manindra Krishna Gupta. Now Manindra is not a character that we meet very often in the Gospel, because he met Sri Ramakrishna just a couple of years before Sri Ramakrishna passed away, and he was only a teenager at that time, 12 to 14 years old. I don't think we're streaming. So I'll begin. We're reading from the book They Lived with God, written by Swami Chaitananda. So once Sri Ramakrishna asked Manindra Krishna Gupta, "What do you want?" "I want to express my ideas about the beauty of the world and human nature. That is my desire," replied young Manindra. "That is fine," said Sri Ramakrishna with a smile. "But if you realize God, you will achieve everything." So sometimes we think that, well, when Sri Ramakrishna asks, "What do you want?" they will ask for illumination. But no, he wanted some worldly desire. So let's see how that turned out. So Manindra Krishna Gupta was born in 1870 in Calcutta, and his grandfather, Ishwar Chandra Gupta, was a famous poet. Now Manindra had an older brother, and his brother and several other young men were all members of the Brahmo Samaj, and they got together and rented a house and formed their own little young men's society. And they called themselves the Young Men's Nest. And so Manindra would join them, just being a young kid, 12 years old, and would go to these meetings with his older brother. And his association with that group, they would periodically drop in and meet Sri Ramakrishna. So the first time that Manindra met Sri Ramakrishna was in 1882. That's 4 years before Sri Ramakrishna passed away, and Manindra was only 12 years old. But because of Manindra's father's work, his family moved to Balgapur, so he was not able to see the master for 3 years. So when he finally was able to see the master was already suffering from cancer and was being relocated for care by other devotees. So we're just talking about the last year, basically, of Sri Ramakrishna's life, that Manindra came in contact with Sri Ramakrishna on a more regular basis. So he was not able to see the master for 3 years. So by then he was 15. After he returned to Calcutta, he enrolled in school. Manindra cared very little for the school curriculum, so he used to study art and literature at home. Soon his guardians discovered that Manindra, instead of going to school, was visiting the eastern part of Calcutta to enjoy the natural beauty of the meadow and canal, and they scolded him. So he was playing hooky, just wandering around the city, admiring nature. But the scolding could not change his attitude. But in September of 1885, Sri Ramakrishna moved to Shyampukur in Calcutta for his cancer treatment. One afternoon, Sarda Babu, an acquaintance of Manindra, asked him, "Would you like to go with me on a visit?" Manindra had previously accompanied him on walks through the countryside, so he agreed. But seeing that Manindra had misunderstood, Sarda explained further, "But today I am not going for a walk. Sri Ramakrishna is now living in a house at Shyampukur. Let us go and see him." Manindra immediately changed into appropriate clothes, and the two left for Shyampukur. When they arrived, Sri Ramakrishna was in his room with M and Swami Vivekananda. The master was reclined on his bed, facing north. As soon as Manindra and Sarda entered, the master rose, and they saluted him. Sri Ramakrishna looked intently at Manindra, then beckoning him to come closer. He smiled a little and whispered, "Come alone tomorrow. Don't bring him." Sarda could not hear what the master had said. Later on their way home, Sarda became curious and asked Manindra, "What did he say to you?" Manindra was a little hesitant to tell him what the master had actually said, so he gave a rather evasive answer. "Well, the master asked me to visit him another day." "My boy, your luck is good," said Sarda. "He did not talk to me at all." On his way home, Manindra felt an irresistible attraction for the master. It was hard for him to sleep that night, and a strange thing happened. He continually saw the smiling face of Sri Ramakrishna all around him, and heard his voice saying, "Come alone tomorrow." Manindra wrote in his memoirs, "Some may think that because I was then a teenage boy, my description is somewhat exaggerated. But please remember that truth never changes with the passing of time, nor does one's experience. The joy of seeing the moon when one is young is the same as the joy of seeing it when one is old. At any rate, I remember vividly that I had struggled to sleep the whole night, and that it was not until the early hours of the morning that I finally fell asleep. The next morning I started again for Shyampukur. I saw M and some other devotees in the master's room. It appeared to me that the master knew of my coming and was waiting to receive me. Before I could sit down, he asked everyone to leave the room, and for me to come sit near him. "Where have you been for so long?" he asked. Saying this, the master burst into tears. He addressed me as though I were a near and dear relative. He touched me, and I noticed a slight smile on his face. Then, all of a sudden, his body became stiff like a corpse. I remained motionless. What was this? Never having seen samadhi before, I knew nothing about it and was quite at a loss. I checked his breath, but could detect no sign of it. His eyes were half closed and his eyelids were motionless. After 15 minutes, I saw that he was gradually returning to normal consciousness. Then, touching my chest, he muttered something and asked me in a deep voice, "What do you want?" Manindra had the feeling that the master could give him anything he wanted. But without considering the pros and cons, he spontaneously voiced his desire to express his feelings about beauty. Manindra then began to cry. The master asked the devotees to take him to the next room. It took them half an hour to stop him from crying and to bring him down from that emotional experience. After that, Manindra began to visit the master frequently and to serve him under the direction of Swami Vivekananda, who was the leader of the master's young disciples. As Manindra was one of the youngest in the group, the disciples and devotees called him Koka, which means young boy. The small Shyampakur house could not accommodate several attendants, so Manindra would serve Sri Ramakrishna during the day and stay at night at Ramchandra Datta's house. And gradually he became well known among the devotees of the master. At Shyampakur, though the master's illness was growing more serious every day, people flocked to him in great numbers in order to satisfy their spiritual longing. Manindra, Sarada, who later became Swami Trigunatitananda, and other newcomers received special instruction from the master during this time. Because Manindra's nature was soft and emotional, he used to dance in ecstasy upon hearing the Lord's name. On the 30th of October in 1885, Sri Ramakrishna said to M, Manindra has an element of Prakriti, of womanliness. He has read the life of Chaitanya and has understood the attitude of the gopis. He has also realized that God is Purusha and man is Prakriti, and that man should worship God as his handmaid. How remarkable! When Sri Ramakrishna moved to Kasipur on the advice of his doctors, Manindra took an active part in serving him. The Holy Mother once mentioned an incident that happened there. When the master was sick, Manindra and Patu, who was another teenage devotee of the master, were fanning him. It was the day of the holy festival, an auspicious day when Krishna played with the gopis with colored powder, and all were playing with the colors outside. This is a very exciting festival in India, where on a day like this, you would find colored powder sprinkled everywhere on everyone. No way to escape it if you are anywhere in the vicinity. I remember when I was in India, watching Swamis come back in their ochre cloth all covered in different colors of powder, their faces covered. And they were asking, hey, you should go outside. I was too shy for that because I did not want to do my laundry, which is hard enough to do there. So no, I did not get covered in powder on that day. But the master repeatedly asked the two boys to join in the festival, but they continued to stay and serve the master. Seeing their love and devotion, the master exclaimed, "Look, these boys are my Ramlala," meaning the child Rama. Manindra was well aware that Sri Ramakrishna was his guru and chosen deity. But when Kumund Bandhu Sen once asked Manindra about his initiation, he was told, One day I was seated near the master. Mahim Chakravarti was present at that time, and he said to the master, "Last night I saw in a dream that I was giving a mantra to Manindra according to your direction." Well, the master asked him to repeat the mantra. As soon as Mahim Chakravarti did so, the master went into samadhi. Afterwards, he came down to the normal plane and asked Mahim to give me that mantra. After the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, Manindra donned the ochre cloth at the behest of Mahim Chakravarti and lived with him. So remember, he's only 15 at this time, already wearing ochre. He always kept in close contact with the monastic disciples of the master, who were then at the Baranagar monastery. Later, he returned home, married, and had several children. Though Manindra did not finish his schooling, he continued his studies under the supervision of a private tutor until the time of his marriage. His tutor was a brilliant man, and it was through his efforts that Manindra became proficient in literature. Manindra's grandfather, Ishwar Chandra Gupta, he was also a famous poet at that time, had founded a daily newspaper called the Sambad Prabhakar, which was later inherited by Manindra's father. Since Manindra was reluctant to accept work for a living, his guardians encouraged him to edit and manage the newspaper. Through this work, he became acquainted with the famous writers of Bengal, like Suresh Chandra Samajpati, Akshay Kumar Baral, and others. Gradually, Manindra became involved in the theater and began to write dramas. As a result, the newspaper was neglected. Unfortunately, he did not appear to have any significant talent in playwriting, so his financial condition soon became critical. When Swami Vivekananda returned from India from the West in 1897, he heard about Manindra's pecuniary condition and asked Swami Brahmananda to give Manindra 1,200 rupees so that his family would not starve. Upon accepting this gift, Manindra burst into tears at the thought of Swamiji's generosity and love for him. Manindra would regularly visit Alambazar Mat, Belur Mat, Dakineshwar, and Yoga Dhyana. On auspicious occasions, he would arrange a festival in honor of Sri Ramakrishna at his house and invite devotees. He kept in close touch with the master's monastic householder disciples, and the Holy Mother was very fond of Manindra, and it was due to his influence that several members of his family received initiation from her. During the later part of his life, when his sons became capable of earning money themselves, Manindra's financial condition improved. Quite often he would visit M and Swamis Sardananda and Shivananda. After retirement, he spent most of his time thinking and talking about Sri Ramakrishna. Although his outer life had not been very successful, his inner life blossomed through the grace of the Master. Whenever Manindra would speak of Sri Ramakrishna and his devotees, his eyes would fill with tears of joy. Manindra passed away in 1939 at the age of 69 at his Calcutta residence. He was simple, sincere, and a humble soul. So this is all that has been written about him. We don't know that much about him because there was no real records about his, because he did not make a name for himself in that sense. But he tried to worship the beautiful. And I suppose that he would also, in so doing, saw that beauty in Sri Ramakrishna. And that's what sustained him through his life. Even though he asked for, of all worldly desires, a rather sublime worldly desire, but it led him to lead a rich inner life. So not everyone could be great in this world, but that doesn't matter. Ramakrishna's grace comes to everyone that takes refuge in him. So that is all for today's class. A few announcements. This Sunday, Swami Brahmatmananda will be giving the Sunday talk. He will be speaking on the teachings of Swami Virajananda, who wrote the book Towards the Goal Supreme. So he'll be expanding on that, and perhaps it will inspire you to attend his classes on Thursday night via Google Meet. There is a Sunday school taking place for the children that day also, so those parents should arrive a little earlier. We have also at 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon a devotional singing. So Raka will be leading that, where we have an opportunity to sing English, Sanskrit, Hindi, Bengali songs that are all devotional songs, some of them songs that Sri Ramakrishna himself would sing. So that event is live only, no live streaming. I should say in person only. So you are welcome to attend that. And Swami Satyamananda will return this Tuesday. And then we have also a guest Swami coming next week, Swami Ishtianananda of Sacramento. Well, I hope so. I hope I said it right, but from Sacramento. He'll be with us for a few days. And he will conduct the meditation retreat at Tapovan on Saturday and give the Sunday talk while he's here. So I encourage you to come in person, but it will be streamed online also. But the Saturday meditation at Tapovan is also an in-person event, so that won't be streamed at that time. So thank you all for coming. I will conclude with a chant. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhakta Nukampa Dritavigraham Vai Ishavataram Paramesamityam Tvam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. We salute that Ramakrishna who is without blemish, eternal and infinite in forms, who has assumed human form out of compassion for the devotees, who is God incarnate, the Supreme Lord, and who is most worshipful. Om, peace, peace, peace to all beings.